Okay, so I did my research paper on Henry Cowell. On March 11th, 1897, Henry was born in Menlo Park in California. His parents, Harry Crowell and Clarissa Dixon Crowell, came from a rather poor lifestyle, but they both were aspiring writers. Harry was homeschooled by his mother, Clarissa, where at age 5 he began his music studies on the violin and faced the challenge of his parents choosing to go their own ways. Several years later, Henry then chose to switch to the piano. When he chose to switch to the piano, he then started composing all of his work at the age of 10. His father leaned towards Chinese, Japanese, Irish folk tunes, while American folk tunes were taught by his mother. Henry saved up what little money he had. At the age of 15, he purchased his very first piano for himself for $60. When he purchased the piano, it allowed him to gain more music experience alongside his work on the violin. By the time he was 17, he had composed over 100 pieces. Henry married Sidney Robinson Cowell, and they had no children together. During Henry's life, he had completed 20 symphonies, 30 other large orchestral works, 18 hymns and tunes, 8 string quartets, and countless smaller pieces. Just a little fun fact, today Henry Cowell has a 40-acre state park named the Henry Cowell Redwood State Park in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Henry was known for his tone clusters at a young age. A tone cluster is a chord made up of adjacent notes played simultaneously. Many of his tone clusters were played on the piano by pressing down on the keys with a flat palm. It can also be played with fists or forearms. Henry did not invent the technique, but he incorporated it into numerous works, like the Harp of Life and Dynamic Motion. Henry tended to tour at a young age, performing his music and gaining much attention for his clusters and piano strings. Henry organized the New Music Society of California. It sponsored concerts of unconventional music and was developed into the umbrella organization for extraordinary arrays of activities that eventually included the publishing of new music editions and new music quarterly records. The main focus of this organization was to encourage cross-cultural exchanges through performances of new music throughout the Americas and in Europe. Henry gained a partner, Charles Ives, where he invested in Henry's organization. By partnering with Ives and creating New Music Society of California, Henry Cowell literally changed the landscape of American music modernism by creating outlets for all composers whose work he saw as vital contributions to the whole world of music. Henry always had much interest in harmonic rhymes. His new music resources that he gained from his new organization allowed him to come up with a new transposable keyboard instrument. This instrument was capable of playing notes in the periodic rhythms comparable to the series of an overtone of a chosen basic pitch. Henry wrote several pieces to be composed on this instrument. However, the instrument had been forgotten. It remained almost 30 years later that Joe Meek, a progressive pop music producer, experimented with the rhythmic idea concept. In the idea of Henry always working on his music, he published 2 books, New Musical Resources in 1930, American Composers on American Music in 1962, along with The Whole World of Music, a Henry Cowell written about himself. The Tides of Monaghan is an Irish folk tale that is a short piano piece in the B minor. Tides of Monaghan is a 3-set part in the 3 Irish legends. Tides of Monaghan was written for a musical prelude to the opera, The Building of Bama. The other 2 songs that completed it were Hero of the Sun and The Voice of Lur. Henry used tone clusters to portray specific programmatic features. Henry Cowell's Aeolian Harp is the best known of his piano string pieces. He was one of the first composers for prepared piano. He also plays the piano like a harp. It sounds very disordered. The pianist is instructed to strum with the left hand directly on the string of a grand piano, controlling the chords played by silently pressing on the keys on the necessary keys with the right hand. The pedals are used to control the durations of the chords. He had a completely unorthodox approach to the piano at the time of writing. Cowell made a study of extended techniques and sounds available on the piano and incorporated these into a series of short compositions, which is how the banshee came about. 2 players are required when playing the banshee. The one is standing at the piano's crook and the other holding down the damper pedal throughout. The music is written on an octave higher than what it sounds, which requires the player standing at the crook to stroke and pluck the interior strings in one of 12 specific ways, using either the flat of the hand, the fingernails, or the flesh of the fingers. The Banshee was known to be one of Cowell's best-known works, which also manifests Cowell's long-standing interest in Irish mythology. Cowell was able to come up with many new ways to play his music. His music was played in a variety of different ways, including the keyboard, orchestral, vocal, and chamber music, and an occasional ballad. He was also known to have many different talents of being an American composer, writer, pianist, lecturer, educator, and publisher. During World War I, Cowell enlisted instead of waiting to be drafted. After he came home, he decided to draft his first book, and new musical resources. Cowell was able to use the people that he met at camp that he was stationed at in World War I to help him write his book, and eventually leading to the start of him lecturing at different universities. Cowell was then later arrested on a morals charge that would claim 4 years of his life. While spending time in prison, Cowell was more dedicated to his music more than ever. He was teaching music classes to over 1,000 students, supervised other classes and teachers, conducted the band, started an orchestra, and composed up to 60 different pieces like Hilarious Curtain Opener and Celtic Set, as well as another draft of a book was set in place. Throughout Cowell's lifetime, he had one particular mentor who helped him get the start of his music career, Charles Steger. Steger encouraged Cowell to attend the Institute of Musical Art in New York City and do formal training. Although Cowell did not last long, Steger taught Cowell how to write his own formal explanation of his tone clusters and where dynamic motion was then later written. Henry was categorized more towards introducing a non-Western sound and instrumental into Western 20th century compositional forms and invented a new sound material and creative effects for new sensations. Like many other 20th century composers, he composed a majority of his pieces on piano and a majority of his pieces overall. But he also enjoyed finding new ways to play his pieces through his tone clusters and playing piano like the harp. Cowell gained more interest from others when he was touring North America and Europe. Cowell gained much more publicity than he ever thought he would, where he played his own experimental pieces like polyrhythms and non-Western. After gaining much attention, he then started his own organization. Henry was the author of 2 books and had 1 other book published about himself. To what I could find, there was only a handful of composers who was an author of books as well. Cowell also enjoyed, later in life, doing folk music with his wife, Sidney Robinson. They both tend to travel and tour a lot to work on pieces together. Many composers, like Henry Cowell, enjoyed lecturing at different places and universities about music. Cowell seemed to be very well liked by others, and was never afraid to turn to help when he needed guidance.